In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold. The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abracast. I'm John. I'm your homeboy, John Towers. Thank you for tuning in. Usually I save these lessons of Zarathustra. They've been the previous 2 months fellow craft episodes. But they're kind of starting to get away from me. I need to do them more than once a month to keep caught up with the ground we're covering. So, in the regular Zarathustra episode. So I'm just going to start filing them into like our little Wednesday Zarathustra shows. That way, anyways, the folks that are like them, you're getting them. You're not having to pay the $3 premium. So that's what's going on this evening. So if you like this, well, if you like the Zarathustra episodes and you're wondering like, well, what does this mean? How does this help me become the overman or like whatever? We unpack them. We unpack the different speeches in these lessons episodes. So I think if you want to get down to the meat and potatoes sort of business of it, the lessons episodes are, where the messaging is at. So if you've wondered about the last, two or three lessons of Zarathustra episodes, you can always find them at Patreon or Subscribestar or whatever. But you're getting at least this one, but it's literally, spoiler alert, it's going to be all the rest of them are just going to be mixed into these episodes now. I know it's kind of shitty to split them up and to keep the first two, as like exclusive episodes. But look, this whole Zarathustra thing is like hitting a moving target. I didn't know I was going to get into it when I got into it. And I guess I didn't realize how long it was going to take me to get through the whole book. So, I'm shooting with my eyes closed anyways. So that's it. Before we get started, I want to thank the fellow craft or all the Patreon and Subscribestar supporters. I'd like to thank you guys. With your help, you help me. You can hear it if you listen to the show often. There's usually this subtle pulse in my recording equipment, and it's always bugged the fuck out of me. I couldn't figure it out. But with the help of the Subscribestar people and the Patreon people, the fellow craft, the degree of the fellow craft, and I think there's one or two people on the Knights of the Vessel of the Art. With your support, I was able to find the pulse and get rid of it. It is going to pop up a little bit here at the very beginning of this episode, but it's going to be gone from now until the rest of the time because of you guys. Also, I was able to sort out a headphone. I didn't sort out a headphone issue. I purchased some more headphone monitors, and it wasn't my headphone app like I thought it was going to be. So I was able to nail some stuff down. I was able to fix the website. I was able to get the whole new degree system lined out. So if you're like, what is he talking about? Fellow craft, Knight of the Vessel of the Arts and stuff. Go to abracast.com and check out the degree section. It explains the whole thing. And the last bit is contact form. There's a contact form on the website. That's something I've been meaning to get to for quite a lot of time. So if you want to drop me a line, You can do it there. Anyhow, let's get into this thing. So I'm not here all night talking about fucking Zarathustra. So this is it. We're going to do I'm just going to get into it. Okay. Thank you very much. If you're playing along at home, now's the time to get your vessel of the art and go ahead and, fill it up with your preferred weapon of mass distraction. And let's get into this shit, shall we? Let's get into this shit, shall we? On the friend. True friends, this one is challenging. True friends drive each other forward towards the goal of the overman because there is a great deal of struggle involved. A friend might often behave as an enemy. Zarathustra suggests that women are not capable of friendship but only love. The existential paper says, on the friend, what is a true friend? Does a friend always only comfort a friend? Or must a true friend sometimes be hard on a friend? Not hard on a friend. He must be hard on a friend. For Zarathustra, in friends one should have one's best enemy. Neither the slave nor the tyrant are capable of this friendship. And I've seen relationships like this before, where there's like an alpha male. If you're hanging out, you should have other alpha males, I think. If you have a beta male with you, you're becoming a tyrant. You got to take a bunch of steps away to not be tyrannical with people that you call your friends. I think maybe that's why women aren't capable of friendship. You know, I've seen chicks be fucking brutal to each other. On the friend, in this speech, Zarathustra speaks of friendship that is desirable to one that would be his disciple. Zarathustra said that friendship should inspire envy between friends, each friend's urging the other through jealousy to ascend to the higher levels of enlightenment. For Zarathustra, all friendships must have this utility and this worthless relationship. And I've seen this in action. I've seen it in action in college. I've seen it in action especially in the army. This is when you get the bros, fucking with each other, drawing dicks on their face. We never did that, but this is the kind of thing. You know, and we never did it in a race to attain enlightenment, for sure. But this is what I'm saying about the beta, an alpha and a beta hanging out. You know, God, I feel like I kind of painted myself into this corner using this alpha and beta business. But if you're all equal, you can all be friends and enemies at different times, and it winds up pushing you. It does wind up pushing you. I said I ran into this kind of thing in college because I did. We were all friends, but we were all brutal to each other. Like, listen, we would be all in the same class. And I've mentioned before, I went to art school. So we were all in the same class, and, you know, we would all critique each other. Like, at the end of, like, a project, you put your project up, and everyone gets to be like, I kind of almost feel like I would wish that you would do something like this, or do something more like this, like graphic design, you know, like you're fucking picking apart, you know, you spent 2 weeks working on this thing, and your friends are being like, this is all fucked up, and this is what you did. Now, you wind up adopting certain terminology and certain languages to, like, linguistics, to make it not brutal, but if you know the terminology, you know how brutal it is. So you're standing up there trying to defend or accept criticism, and then afterwards you go out, you know, you walk down to McDonald's to get lunch or whatever, and like you got to put it all behind you. It's like the rising, what is it? Melting iceberg raises all ships or something. A rising tide lifts all ships. So I totally like understand what he's talking about here. Is like, you know, is it like a deadly enemy? Am I worried about Fat Joe Crack pulling out a knife and stabbing me because he's my enemy? No, but he can be brutal to me to make me better. And likewise, I could be to him. Grade Saver. If a man sees excellence or flaws in his friend, Zarathustra teaches that he should seek solitude in order to reflect on how to attain the same excellence and how to overcome the same flaws in himself. In solitude, Zarathustra's disciples gain the spirit of victory and the spirit that leads them towards enlightenment. And you know what else I think about this? He's like, you know, you ever hear of like this business with like conflict resolution where it's like, Zishim Hemsi said something bad about me and I think we should sit down and talk about it. And they're like, why did Hemsi, why did you say this to this person? And they're like, he hurt my feelings when he said this and that and the other thing. Like, you gotta flush all of that out of your fucking life. You gotta flush it all out of your fucking life. Because conflict resolution like this doesn't resolve conflict. It makes alphas and it makes betas. And it's dictated to by authority. I guess that might be like the main topic of this, like the main theme is you are your authority. And I'm not saying that like you need to stop paying your taxes and become a sovereign citizen. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying as much as you can in your own life, you know, this radical responsibility business that I talked about, you know, and a way to check and balance this is keeping the people that you surround yourself in fucking checks and balances, son. You need to be the enemy of your friends every once in a while. Social justice warriors in the left and stuff nowadays have this thing. And I mean, you could see it. It's on full display. And every level of humanism, every level in culture right now. It's like, if you don't agree with me, you're a Nazi. You don't agree with me, you're a racist. You don't agree with me, you know, whatever. You're a bigot, homophobe, whatever it is. It's predictable. And it's also doing a disservice to people. Like, there are people out there that are racists and Nazis and bigots and homophobes. And every time you level that accusation at a person that just doesn't agree with the bullshit that you're saying, you are fucking diminishing real instances, Jesse Smollett, I'm talking to you, of racism, Nazism, bigotism, racism, homophobia, anyhow, what I'm saying is, that's what I'm saying. Okay, we got one more. On 1001 goals, on the 1001 goals, different groups of people value different things. And they have different concepts of good and evil. What people consider good signifies that they consider difficult. And what they have striven to overcome previously, groups determined that was good and that was evil, and now individuals should renounce the good and the evil and strive instead to become overmen. The Existentialism paper says, on the 1,000 goals in one, in his travels through as many lands, Zarathustra finds a different tablet of good and evil over every people. In contrast to Plato, there is no one true good and evil for all people. So Zarathustra is actually based on Zoroaster, who is he's like the ancient Sumerian or Babylonian guy who discovers good and evil. So I think this is what this is talking about, at least this portion of it. Every people, every culture has their own tablet of good and evil, and tablets of good and evil are recognized as human creations. Morality has a human origin. It is not handed down to us on tablets written by God, but rather in Nietzsche's famous phrase, is only human, all too human. A tablet of good hangs over every people, and behold, it is the tablet of their overcomings. Behold, it is the voice of their will to power. Powerful statement. We know what the we know what undergoings is. So overcomings. That's interesting. This is the first mention of the important concept, will to power. It is a context. It is clear that Zarathustra is not speaking of a desire for power, a desire which we could, if we chose to hold and check the will to power, is that within a people, within a human being which values, it is not something that we could choose not to have. It's a sense. It is that which makes life possible. One simply could not live without valuing another, without selecting some things of valuable into some things as not. The tablets of good and evil that hang over every people are a product of this valuing. Okay, grade saver. In this speech, Zarathustra tells of his great travels and has seen many cultures and many civilizations, and has found that over all of them to find good and evil within them. However, these goods and evils are never the same. One culture might view a good, one another culture views as evil, and vice versa. A culture finds worth in overcoming great difficulties. The culture identifies its highest need, the greatest difficulty, and when that thing is overcome, a culture calls it holy. Holy. Zarathustra teaches his disciples that all great meanings is created by humans. Humanity creates laws and ideas to overcome the difficulties it faces in society. A person is first a creator who assigns value to things. Only second is the person, an individual. People, Zarathustra teaches, value community over the ego, which proves that humanity has not reached its highest goal. Zarathustra says that there have been 1,000 different cultures and 1,000 different goals, but the overman, the 1,001st goal of humanity, is the ultimate goal. All right, things are going to normalize after this. The next speech is called On Love of the Neighbor. Zarathustra turns the lessons of the great prophets on their heads. Should people love their neighbors? I don't know. Zarathustra answers no. A person should love himself more than he loves his neighbor. That seems self-evident. I don't know if I should get into this. I don't know. I talked about it kind of on the show before. I'm just going to skip it. Zarathustra answers no. A person should love himself more than he loves his neighbor. Until a person truly recognizes the sacred nature of his individuality, which I have a keen sense of, he will not become the overman. Zarathustra claims that people love their neighbors because they want someone to think highly of them. I don't care what you think. This is funny because I got a very negative iTunes review the other day, and it's the kind of review that I would get bent out of shape about. Like, I would literally have lost sleep over in the past. So I got like a flood of them. I did like a communist episode, or I can't remember what it was, but I had a flood of negative rates and reviews, and I was like stressing out about it. And my wife was like, yo, dude, you don't give a fuck what anybody thinks about you. Why is it different on iTunes? And I'm like, you know what? You're right. And ever since then, I'm just like, I don't give a fuck. That's why I have the voiceover lady ask for rate and reviews at the end, because I don't give a fuck. Loving one's neighbor is actually a selfish thing, but people don't think of it this way. For Zarathustra, the desire to reach the goal of the overman should be greater than the desire to love one's neighbor. Instead, think of finding a neighbor. Zarathustra encourages his disciples to find a friend to compete with for enlightenment. This is what the pre-recorded business was talking about with the friend stuff. On the way of the creator, not everyone is suited to be an overman. Freedom is only good if you can do something with it. Most people can't bear the requisite loneliness. I can. The Existentialism paper says on the way of the creator. On the way of the creator, not everyone is suited to be an overman. Freedom is only good if you could do something with it. Most people can't bear the requisite loneliness. The existential paper says, on the way of the creator, after encouraging the friend to go into solitude. In order to be a creator now, Zarathustra speaks of the difficulties that await the way of the creator. Can you give yourself your own evil and your own good and hang your own will over yourself as law? Can you be your own judge and avenger of your law? Terrible it is to be alone with the judge and the avenger of one's own law. Thus is a star thrown out into the void and into the icy breath of solitude. Great Saver says, on the way of the creator, Zarathustra has now begun to create the kind of disciple that will follow his teachings and strive to attain the level of the overman. To achieve this goal, his disciples must go into solitude. As mentioned before, and the speech tells the disciple what to expect when he does venture into the solitude. Zarathustra tells his disciples that even though they are leaving the conventions of the world, they will still carry the voice of the herd with them. This voice will make them feel guilty for going on their own way. But once the disciple overcome the guilt, they will be free to dictate their own rules and the laws for themselves. The herd will disapprove of this, but it is a necessary step on the way to the overman. Zarathustra tells his disciple, the one who goes into solitude, the one who begins to ascend to the overman will be the one the herd will hate the most. Zarathustra himself discovers this here, his encounter with the masses in the market, and Zarathustra tells his disciple that if he wants to be a star, he must shine through for them all the more. Zarathustra warns, the one in solitude will meet many enemies, but the worst enemy will always be the self. The self will want to go back to the herd and will try to sabotage the ascension. The next speech is on little, old, and young women. Women want men in order to make babies, and men want women in order to play. A woman's greatest virtue is her love for men, particularly strong and noble men. And old and young little women a very obscure and troubling passage about men. Women love, oh boy. Keep in mind, I'm reading, this is source material. This is, this does not, this is not the opinion of the host. Women love pregnancy and childbirth. Perhaps it is good to remember not to take any of this literally. There you go. Nietzsche's writing in caveats as he goes. As the theme of the whole of the first part of Zarathustra concerns the metamorphosis of the spirit from the camel to the child, which we talked about ad nauseum, the stage of the creator, the one who would overcome himself, the one who would become the overhuman. Perhaps when Zarathustra is speaking of women, he is not referring to the female sex, but rather to the child bearer in us all. I think that's profound. I think that's profound. On Little Women and on Little Women, Old and Young, this translation is called, and this is the Grade Saver. The speech opens with someone taunting Zarathustra, asking him why he sneaks around as if he is concealing something beneath his coat. And Zarathustra answers that he is concealing something, a great truth that threatens to cry out. And he tells the mocker that he met an old woman on the road that day, and the old woman wanted Zarathustra to speak to her about women. Zarathustra replied that he should only speak to men about women, implying that he can only teach men of the deceit of women. Remember, this is a different source than the Existentialism paper. I'm working off of 3 different papers. But when he contested to talk to the old woman anyways, and Zarathustra tells the old woman that a woman's only role is to be pregnant. He calls man a warrior and a woman a warrior's dangerous plaything. The woman should be for the man's pleasure and nothing more. A man, Zarathustra says, is childish and needs a plaything. This is the role that a woman can feel. A woman's greatest challenge is to be the one that can give birth to the overman. I'm finding all kinds of things wrong with this take on it. Zarathustra then changes the tone of the teaching to show that a woman's love is meant to do. A woman should give sacrificially to a man, and her love should be wonderful, yet fearful thing for a man. He should play with her love, let also be afraid of it. When a woman gives such love, she becomes obedient to her husband and thus fulfills her true desires. Again, I'm having a hard time squaring this up. A man's desires are deep and strong, according to Zarathustra, and a woman can only intuit such desires. The old woman, a sly character, tells Zarathustra that his teachings are good, even though he has so little contact with women. He had to be living on a mountain for like 30 years of his life, and then he goes down and kills a tightrope walker. This is meant to be a playful taunt, acknowledging that Zarathustra's teaching is for young women, not old women. The old woman then goes to Zarathustra's teaching to the young women of the town. On the adder's bite. This section criticizes the Christian ethic of turn the other cheek. If you've been wronged, you are better off releasing your anger through a little revenge than in letting it build up inside. Someone who wrongs you has done you good. and you would put him to shame if you were to turn the other cheek. This calls back to the friendship business, where your friend should be your enemy, and so forth. You know, there's something to be said about that, too. You know, what about, like, bullies? Like, when you fucking punch a bully in the face, they wind up becoming your friend. This has something to do with the alpha beta thing that I was yammering on about earlier, too. Interesting. The Existentialism paper says, on the bite of the adder, an adder bites Zarathustra, but this Zarathustra tells the snake that it is not rich enough to give. Applicable to truly giving, the adder licks the wounds and takes back the gift. Another obscure passage, but some more fine aphorisms. It is nobler to declare oneself wrong than it is to insist that one is right, especially when one is right. Only one must be rich enough for that. All right, so we're moving into, which one is this? This is Grade Saver. On the adder's bite, Zarathustra falls asleep under a fig tree, and an adder appears and bites him on the neck, and Zarathustra is awakened by the bite and stares into the snake's eyes. And that the snake tries to get away, but Zarathustra catches him and thanks him for the bite. He says, "Thank you for the bite. Thank you for the bad review, you asshole." The adder replies that his bite can kill a man, but Zarathustra tells the snake that his bite could not kill a dragon. Zarathustra tells the snake to back his poison, and the snake licks the wound clean. Zarathustra's disciples asks what the point of the story is, and Zarathustra begins to explain that what their relationship to others should be. Zarathustra's teachings are a refutation of the New Testament's imperative to do good. Instead, Zarathustra tells his disciples that a person should give others what they deserve. Zarathustra does not try to do good to the snake that bites him. Instead, since the snake knows that Zarathustra should kill him, Zarathustra forces the snake to clean his wound. In Zarathustra's world, taking revenge is more humane than not taking revenge. If a person does wrong to another person, that person should return the wrong. And the kind of justice administered by the overman, the quote good unquote of the world, might not agree with such teachings, but Zarathustra says that those who subscribe to such concepts of good and evil are condemned anyway. So I'm a little late for this, but we're going to do it. Pastor Larry Solomon's Tips and Tactics for Confronting the Supernatural, number 54. When Ophiuchus wrestles the great serpent, he grasps it by the tail and by the neck, so he won't get whacked or bitten. Can I get an amen? If you'd like more of Pastor Larry Solomon's Tips and Tactics for Confronting the Supernatural, please consider visiting our Patreon or Subscribestar.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content and access to the private Abracast workgroup by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
On child and marriage. Marriage is only good as a means to breeding the overman. If you marry to ease your loneliness, it is merely a distraction. The Existentialism paper goes on to say, on children and marriage, more on love and the creation of the child. Marriage, thus, I name the will of two to create the one. This is a fucking Tool song. That is more than those who created it, reverence for each other. As for those willing with such a will, is what I name marriage. But even your best love is merely an ecstatic parable and a painful ardor. It is a torch that should light up the higher paths for you. Over and beyond yourselves, and shall love one day thus learn first love. And for that you had to drain the bitter cup of your love. Keep looking. Grade Saver says, on child and marriage, Zarathustra begins speaking to a disciple who is about to get married, and Zarathustra asked the young man if he has the right to get married. And he tells the young man that many men seek marriage and children out of unworthy desires, neediness, loneliness, on animal cravings of sex or companionship. Indeed, a man should want a wife and children as monuments to his enlightenment. He should want children so that he can raise them to attain the state of the overman. Zarathustra is not opposed to children or marriage, but without the correct motivation, these can be weights on a man's soul. I have some things to say about this. I'm not sure if I should. In the Lessons of Zarathustra Part 1, I lashed in a sea of chaos. I lashed Gnosticism to this idea of the overman. And I think I even mentioned the idea of them not wanting to have kids. They didn't want to perpetuate this idea of eternal reoccurrence over and over again. I don't know. I recorded that months ago. I'm not going to try to get buried into it again. But this is interesting. This is why I don't have kids. I don't have kids. One, because I don't want to. I don't want to encase another divine spark into this material world shithole. Two. Yeah, I mean, it's going to hell. The globalists have won, I think. We're in a bright, shiny reprieve right now, but I'm looking at the millennials and I'm like, we're all going down. We're rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic right now. I'm sorry, millennials. I love you too, except for when dudes smile with their mouths wide open. What is that? Why do you do that? I don't understand it. Oh, back to this. Zarathustra teaches that many men go forth to look for a wife, but instead fall prey for their own lusts and their animal desires. This is how a man gets into a bad marriage, where the woman controls him, or the relationship between the two is burdensome. The correct love between a man and a woman is one in which both seek a higher existence and the enlightenment, and a man should want most of all to attain the state of overman. This is a perfect thing to say. This is what you would see something like this in Gnosticism. A man would want most of all to attain the state of gnosis. Back to this overman business. and his wife and his children should only be aids in that journey. Nietzsche says on free death, there is an art to dying at the right time. Most people cling on to life too long, and some don't live long enough. A free death is chosen by the person dying and serves as an inspiration to those still living. Socrates is a perfect example. When he died, he had an heir in Plato, and his courageous death inspired his followers. Zarathustra suggests that Jesus died too young. If he'd lived longer, he might have learned to be cheerful and to love life on earth for its own sake. The Existentialism paper says, on free death, on dying at the right time, literally, like, I'm not suicidal, but I'm like I'm tired of paying taxes. You know what I mean? So it's like, I understand dying at the right time. Not too early, not too late. Remember, remember that the overcoming requires a going under, which I think we talked about the last episode, a perishing of a sort. Thus, I want to die myself that you, my friends, may love the earth more for my sake. And to the earth I want to return that I may find rest in her who gave birth to me. On Grade Saver, Zarathustra teaches that one should, quote, die at the right time, unquote. He says that everyone sees dying as an important event, but people should not celebrate death. Death will only be an important event, an event that will be celebrated when a person's death becomes a goad and a promise to the living. To become the overman, the correct way for a person to die is to die by giving hope and promise to the overman, to those around him. The second best way for a person to die, Zarathustra teaches, is to die fighting. Zarathustra then outlines different kinds of people and the different ways they shall die, and some will live too long and will become too old for their truths. Some are like apples that only become ripe in the fall, and they are sour until later in life, and then become ripe for the truth of Zarathustra's teaching. Some will never find the truth, and Zarathustra will tell these people that they should wish for their own deaths. Zarathustra laments that the preachers of the day only preach for a, quote, slow death, and not for the right kind of death. He laments that a Jesus died too young, brought about by the evil with which he surrounded himself. Jesus, Zarathustra says, would have learned to live and to love the earth. And he, if he had only stayed in the desert, oh, that's interesting, and not come amongst other people. Zarathustra predicts that his own death will be a wonderful occasion because his disciples around him will carry on his teachings of the overman in a way. Zarathustra is not following his own teaching. He could have died earlier, but now he says the joy of expecting that his disciples will carry on the ideal of the overman makes his lingering on earth worthwhile. So, hey man, I've been John Towers, and this has been the Abracast, and this has been the Lessons of Thus Spake Zarathustra, Part 3. And I hope I was able to shed some light, and I hope that I was able to entertain you with some of my musings in real time about reading some of these philosophical summaries and explanations of these things. So I'd like to thank all of my Patreons and Subscribe Star people, the people in the degree of the Fellowcraft, the people in the degree of the Red Mark, and the people in the degree of the Vessel of the Art. And have a good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.